I did take CrossFit to the extreme. Myself, I'm not a very talented athlete. I was never, a super gifted athlete, but there was one thing that I could do. And that was I could do a lot of things pretty well, but nothing exceedingly well. Hello and welcome to the Weaponized Body Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Ryan Hewitt. And as always, coming at you with a hot topic on metabolic movement and mindset. Today, I thought I'd do a fun podcast episode, a movement episode, but really we're going to talk about elements of all three. And the title of this podcast is 5 Lessons I Wish I Knew as a CrossFit Athlete in My 30s. Right now, I'm 45 years old, soon to be 46. And I started CrossFitting at the age of 28, actually. This is back in, late, I guess, 2007. This would have been the infancy of CrossFit. And I think it was like kind of the golden age of CrossFit. And through, the 2010s, I think it was kind of the peak of CrossFit. I feel blessed that I found CrossFit when I did, and I have no regrets as far as all the training I did, uh, all the friendships that I made, all the competitions I did, all the connections I made. It was an amazing time in my 30s, but that doesn't come without reflection on things I wish I would have done better, or things I wish I would have known differently. Of course, part of this is just, due to being young and stupid. Um, I think when in the early days of CrossFit, I think we just didn't know what we didn't know at the time too. There was a lot of throwing spaghetti against the wall. There's a lot of trying all types of different programming and just doing a lot of dumb things, which was a blast, an absolute blast. However, there is a dark side of chasing that. I did CrossFit to the competitive level. I really enjoyed the competitive, I guess, the competitive part of CrossFit. I lost some of that when I stopped playing hockey, and I missed out on that competition. So it really filled that void that I was looking for. I hadn't played hockey since chiropractic school. Really, I played for my college, and then a couple years just kind of floating around. But I found CrossFit, really in 2008 is when I started really pouring a lot of my focus into it. So this competitive, I guess, focus of CrossFit brought me from 2008 all the way into the 2010s. And really kind of the highlights, I guess, of my CrossFit career, if you will. Not that I was anything special, but I did go to the CrossFit Games as a team in 2011, which was an absolute blast. I competed with CrossFit Route One with some good friends, and my wife Kendra was on the team as well. And we competed in the Home Depot Center in Carson, California, and that's definitely the highlight, I think. But yeah, a lot of regional competitions, opens, a lot of local comps. Just a lot of fun throwing down with friends. But I did take CrossFit to the extreme. Myself, I'm not a very talented athlete. I was never, a super gifted athlete, but there was one thing that I could do. And that was I could do a lot of things pretty well, but nothing exceedingly well. So that actually lends itself, pretty well to CrossFit because, over the course of a weekend or, 4, 5, 6, 7 workouts, things tend to average out. And, I usually found myself at the top of the heap. By the end of it, if there was enough workouts, my top end strength wasn't ever, extraordinary. My short, fast, heavy metcons weren't extraordinary, but, I could really lean into those long chippers and just suffer. I discovered a lot about myself, particularly my ability to suffer. Um, and I don't know where that comes from. I just, I have this extra gear that I was able to tap into to bring myself to the brink of, unconsciousness or, just major discomfort and redline myself till I was about to throw up, puke, shit myself, whatever. Sounds fun, right? But You learn a lot about yourself when you're able to take yourself to that kind of place, dark place. But here's the thing: there are five particular things I thought about that I look back at now, and I really wish I would have had more focus and attention and priority towards. And here we go. So I'm going to list them out. The first one that comes to mind, of course, is prioritizing recovery as much as training. When you're in your late 20s and early 30s, you don't wake up in pain for the most part, or most people don't. Um, myself, I was able to really lean in and do, multiple workouts in a day and just have soreness, but very little joint pain. Even as a chiropractor having a physical job, I could really kind of burn the candle at both ends. At this point, I wasn't ever prioritizing, or I didn't understand the absolute critical importance of sleep. I would prioritize just really crushing myself with metabolic conditioning and strength, and not really hyper focused on nutrition or the importance of making sure I'm fueling those performances and especially the recovery. And also something that I was still doing routinely was consuming alcohol. And I wasn't going out and like getting drunk a lot, but there was routine alcohol consumption. I remember Kendra and I used to drink wine during the week. On the weekends, we'd have, multiple drinks on, Friday, Saturday night, occasionally Sunday afternoon. And yeah, I just, those things come to mind when I think about, man, all the tremendous efforts I put into my physical body, but not paying as much attention on the other side to, like, how am I gonna, really focus and put that kind of attention into the recovery piece? And I've talked about on podcasts about the, detriments of alcohol, and in particular how alcohol cascades into all your metabolic health negatively. So first of all, it affects body composition. It really shuts off metabolic processes that build muscle and prioritize burning fatty acids and fat, and it really kind of uh, you know prioritizes storage. Right, it will help. You'll store body fat more readily, and really, I think one of the craziest detriments that I never gave credit to was how bad it fucks your sleep up. It really pulls you out of that REM and deep sleep. And had I worn wearables back then, I probably would have changed my habits sooner. The thing I always credit my Whoop and why I still wear it. I was an early adopter in 2018, I think. That I started wearing it and really realizing how much alcohol was affecting my recovery. I'd look at my heart rate variability and my resting heart rate in the morning, and then I'd look at my sleep and my recovery score, and it would always be suppressed, even drinking one alcoholic beverage. Obviously, the later in the day you consume it, the more it'll affect your sleep. So one thing I regret is not prioritizing, uh, I guess, minimizing alcohol and, making sure I picked my spots when I was gonna drink, so it wouldn't affect my recovery. And then sleep, like, I wouldn't g have, like, a routine regular bedtime. I was always trying to win this, like, mind over mattress war. I remember just for years and years, I was like, "Man, I'm just not a morning person. I'm just not designed to wake up early." I'm one of those people that could stay up and whatever it is, party, watch movies, whatever. And what I realized is it had nothing to do with, my nature as a night owl. It had everything to do with my habits. Once I prioritized and got to bed on time, and on time for me is about 10 p.m., and I was able to rise at 5 o'clock uh, with relative ease, once I got that into, routine, and that lent itself it's so true that more hours before midnight that you're able to sleep, it's almost like double the hours you get after midnight, and I don't know what it is about that, but if I was trying to recover from, let's say, I did 2 metcons that day and some strength, I mean, yeah, I would have been so much more recovered and healthier had I prioritized sleep more often, especially on the weekends. I think a lot of people they kind of undo a lot of their efforts that they put in the gym on the weekends, whether that's with their nutrition or their sleep. And then lastly, diet. I didn't really put a focus on my macros specifically until probably my mid 30s. I was always just kind of eating whatever I thought was, a healthy routine. I tried different diet styles. We got into, the paleo sort of push. And of course, the CrossFit mantra that, eat, meat, nuts and seeds, little starch, some fruit, no sugar. And, that was well and all. So I was focusing on decent food quality. But what happened was I was not focused on eating enough protein, and I probably wasn't eating enough, especially enough carbs. And I see this a lot with CrossFitters that are doing a lot of metabolic conditioning. If you're not replenishing your glycogen stores and eating enough carbohydrate, particularly fueling around your training sessions before and after, you're going to bonk. You're going to see effects of this with your performance, your health, your recovery, and your blood work. And yeah, so I would have probably wished that I wore a wearable sooner. And that would have probably helped me clean up my sleep sooner, my nutrition. And one thing that changed my life, was in those mid 2010s, probably like 2016, 17, I started to do blood work. And what I realized is my blood work was a mess. Uh, you know, if you looked at me from the outside, you'd be like, yeah, healthy, strong, great, good athlete, moves well. But on the inside, I was, on a one-way train to just total disaster. I shared a little bit about my story of, uh, how I ended up completely running myself into the ground. So, it all started with an infection that I developed in my elbow, I think from a turf, and this chronic this infection, it ended up being a staph infection. It kept popping up, in my elbow and then in my knee and in my other elbow. And the reason was I was still doing multiple metabolic conditioning workouts and strength training workouts and not prioritizing recovery. And I was just really grinding my immune system down. And what had happened is I started to affect my thyroid. My TSH levels were rising. My TSH was almost 5.0 at a time. And my white blood cell immune system, my monocytes were elevated. I had white, immune suppression, and I just started to look at things under the hood. My liver enzymes were elevated chronically. I was chronically dehydrated. I wasn't drinking enough water. And yeah, all this I didn't discover until I really looked under the hood and saw, what was being affected. And then I finally consulted with somebody who was like, "Oh my god, dude, you're completely throttling yourself. Like, you're not drinking enough water. You're not sleeping properly. You're under fueling. You're doing too many metabolic conditioning workouts and not prioritizing recovery, etc." So that really changed my life, but I learned that one the hard way. And what had happened is I ended up, I think this did contribute to some of my injuries, my low back injury. That was a bit of a dummy technique thing. Um, but some of my tissues were being, I guess, broken down more rapidly than they should have. Particularly, I think my knee cartilage, my wrists, and whatnot. So this brings me to number 2. So number 1 was I wish that I prioritized recovery as much as I prioritize my training. Number 2 is, uh, moving well, not moving more. And I always thought more was better. And I think this was the mindset when we started CrossFitting and we'd see guys like Rich Froning doing fucking 3, 4, 5 workouts in a day and be like, I'm going to be like Rich. Yeah, genius. The guy is like a cyborg. Ryan Hewitt is not Rich Froning. And lo and behold, Ryan injures his lumbar spine, over and over. Ryan injures one knee, then injures the other knee. And this took its toll, but it took years. It took 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, of CrossFitting at a competitive level. And, all the meanwhile, I did learn over time that, I should start doing more functional bodybuilding and, prioritizing, I guess you could say more technique oriented things, but the volume, man, I was still doing incredible volume. And instead of prioritizing precision, um, quality movement, progressive loading, I prioritize volume, just more and more and more. So quality over quantity, right? And This requires patience. This requires checking your ego at the door. Um, and it just requires, I guess the discipline of understanding that, like it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? And this goes for a lot of things, whether it's you're learning to play guitar, you're learning to shoot a gun, you're learning CrossFit technique, whether it's gymnastic movements or Olympic lifting movements, even powerlifting movements, whatever it is. Just taking the time uh, over and really just dedicating yourself to the process. And early on, I think we were just in such a rush to get super fit. And man, it was a blast. It was fun and we got super fit, but it was at the detriment of, I guess, what I'm suffering today with, which is, I've definitely had to do a lot of repair to my lower back. I've shared before, I've done bone marrow concentrate stem cell injections in my back. I'm doing hormone optimization at this point from all the chronic hormone suppression that I suffered. Um, and My knees, yeah, so I've done a lot of work to my knees. The best thing I did was actually just 2 solid years of focused hypertrophy and rebalancing work of my lower body. My knees feel more bulletproof now, but it took a couple of years to really balance out. I was a very quad dominant athlete, catching all of my squats and my, power clean my squat cleans, squat snatches, all in sort of like I had really great ankle mobility, so I could get under really fast and just catch it in a rock bottom position and really shearing my knees. So there was a lot of things that I could do, but you don't feel the consequences till later. And if I could be any voice of reason to anybody is like, just take your time. I wish somebody would have just, shook me and just like, hey man, you're not going to be a CrossFit Games athlete. Nobody cares about your performance as much as you do. You're not trying to prove yourself to anybody. In fact, play the long game. Play the long game. So do regular mobility and stability, like assessments. Have somebody like a second pair of eyes, watch you move and be really critical and just take that stuff. Don't be defensive and really take that stuff seriously. Doing tempo work and different positioning with your lifts. Film your lifts, ask for feedback, hire a coach, all those things that I didn't do because of ego, because I thought I knew more, because we were uh, when you're competing with other people too, you're not really like coaching each other. You're in the grind with one another. So just prioritizing like playing the long game, prioritizing movement overload. Number 3, more hypertrophy training and zone 2 cardio and less metabolic conditioning. Now, the heart of CrossFit is the classic metcons, the classic couplets, triplets, chippers, all that stuff that's super fun. And it's the stuff you think about when you're like, I got a really good workout because you're laying on the floor, your heart's pounding out of your chest, you're sweating all over the place, your shirt's off, and it's a blast. Like suffering with other people. I guess if you CrossFit, you can relate. Or if you've played sports and whatnot, like suffering together just builds bonds, builds friendships. It's fun. But here's the thing: when all you're doing is just chronic metabolic conditioning, what you're going to do is you're going to create a lot of metabolic breakdown, a lot of neurological fatigue, and if you're not prioritizing recovery and you're not balancing with like long and slow and just like strength work, what's going to happen is you're just going to run yourself down. You're going to end up with like a lot of adrenal dysfunction, hormone dysfunction. Like metabolic conditioning is great. High intensity interval, that stuff is fantastic. But you got to use it as a tool. It's got to be like part of your training. It can't just be the focus of your training. And if it is, you got to be really, really hyper focused on recovery because man, that stuff beats you up. Now, if I had to design a perfect program, it would have high intensity interval in it. It would be maybe like 3 to 5 a week sessions, and not all those sessions are designed to like crank your heart rate out to like 95%. We're talking, some of them are longer 20-minute sort of EMOMs, and then some of them are like 5-minute, like thrashing yourself like a Tabata workout on an assault bike. those kinds of things. And the other thing too is I think when you're doing a CrossFit type of a framework, like you're trying to cram in an hour, a strength session and well, I guess like a warm up, a strength session, and then a metcon. And man, you're not getting nearly enough hypertrophy work in that amount of time. So, programming that you have at least 2 to 3 other hypertrophy sessions in a week. What I mean by that is they look like more bodybuilding-esque workouts. You don't have to be doing chest and back, bis and tris, legs. You can, program it where you're doing multiple body parts, but what you're doing is you're doing slower tempo types of lifts. You're working on pushing blood into the muscle belly. It's more about the mind-muscle connection and really coordinating a lot of your movements under load, but under controlled loads. So you're not doing ballistic movements like kipping pull-ups. You're not doing Olympic lifting types of movements. These are like this is the stuff that probably we all started doing when we started working out, like from the Arnold Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, like those types of things. And I tell you what, now at 45 years old, that is the bulk of my training. I'm doing 4 to 5 days a week of just 1 hour, one solid hour of strength slash hypertrophy training. Here's the other thing that I didn't do enough. I started doing more of it as I got more interested in aerobic sports like Ironman triathlons, ruck marathons, obstacle races, stuff like that, is doing a couple of zone 2 cardio sessions in a week. Nobody's gonna show up to a CrossFit class to do, you know, 45 minutes of sitting on a rower, right? So you're not gonna see this programmed in a box typically, but if you want to be, um, you wanna be hormonally healthy, you want good body composition, you want good cardiovascular health, and, like, you wanna be balanced, you wanna start doing more long and slow efforts. This could look like, a hike on the weekend with your family and then another slow jog in the week. It could look like sitting on the rower at like a 2.5 minute pace for 30 minutes, a couple times a week. So we're talking just like low level cardio. When you say zone 2 cardio, it's like 60 to 70% of your heart rate max. So it's not, this workout's not going to leave you completely out of breath. You should be able to have like a conversation while you're doing it, like a strained conversation. It's not one of those ones where your heart's beating out of your chest and you're going to need to lay on the floor afterwards. That's really, really good for recovery work too, by the way. You hear about this flushing lactic acid, stuff like that. It's not really true, but what you're doing is you're pushing lymph and blood through your body and your muscles, and your heart. So what it does, it lends itself really nicely to recovery, and it's really, really good for body composition and cardio health. So, making sure you get a blend of strength, hypertrophy, aerobic plus the anaerobic metcons. Number 4, this is something I thought about that I did a lot, and I wish I would have done more engagement with the CrossFit community, doing more workouts of the day with, the CrossFit community that would just go and show up at certain times rather than lone wolfing in the corner. I did a lot of that. And I think that came about early on because the story that I told is that, well, the workout of the day in the class isn't good enough, for me to do well at this next local box competition I'm signed up for or for the CrossFit Open. And here's the thing, who cares? If you're not somebody who's gunning for like a regional placing or a CrossFit Games position, like it doesn't matter. You need to be in this for the long haul, for health, performance, longevity, aesthetics, performance, and also, for fun. I wish I would have had more fun, and I did have a ton of fun, but, I ended up doing a lot of workouts solo, which I do like working out alone sometimes, but, I think that, doing my own thing in the corner, while everyone was, doing sort of the community workout, I wish I would have done more of that because the story I told myself was that, the workout of the day wasn't enough. And all I could have done was I could have scaled it up a bit if I wanted to. You know what? Some of those workouts that were quote unquote easier probably were workouts that I needed more anyway. If it was something like, oh, sit ups, push ups, box jumps, and running, like, yeah, could you use that? Absolutely, right? Just, jump in there, have fun, connect with other people, and the thing is, I was so focused on competition that every time I worked out, I was treating it like a competition, and I wasn't treating it always like fun. So chasing the numbers is not a healthy way to be. Sometimes it's fine, to feed that competitive edge, but um, yeah, man. I mean, I wish I would have at least done one or two group wads in the week, and I there was periods of time where I would do that, but I wish I would have done more of it. Yeah, just making workouts more social. Um, and on the weekends we would do more of a competitive, harder type of class together. So, but a couple more in the week with the community would have been nice. Number 5, and this kind of piggybacks on number 4, which is knowing what really matters. And what I became obsessed with was PRs, was the leaderboard, was my Fran time and all the named workout times, rankings, podium positions and whatnot. And in the end, like now in the year 2025, at 45 years old, almost 46, like there isn't a single person that remembers, like, hey, how did Ryan do in the CrossFit Open in 2012, 2013? Like nobody fucking cares. Nobody knows, nor should anybody care um, to begin with. Like it became too much of an identity rather than, something that was just a fun way to work out and stay fit and healthy. Because the truth is nobody is going to remember your Fran time. Um, you know, your kids are going to remember, a healthy dad that's able to play with them. They're not going to remember that, yeah, dad placed, 86th in the Northeast in 2014. Nobody fucking cares. So this focus on the lifts, the numbers and the rankings and whatnot. I mean, that took away from my business, it took away from my marriage, and it took away too much of my identity that became, Brian the CrossFitter. Which I love that I did all the CrossFit that I did, and it built this incredible base of fitness that I still enjoy. But it didn't align with my long-term goals. And I figured this out after a while, but I did learn the hard way. As I mentioned, I paid dearly with my health. I almost paid with my marriage and my business and whatnot. But just always remembering like what really matters. This training is a tool. It's not an identity. Make sure that the training aligns with your goals, right? It aligns with how you show up in your energy. It aligns with all the people you hang out with and the friends, and making sure that the workouts feel good and you recover well, and you're not in pain all the time. Like it's not a badge of honor to be like, oh man, I'm fucked up because I worked out so hard, whether that's with soreness, whether that's with joint pain and whatnot. So these 5 lessons, I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to relate to all 5 of these, but if you are like in your late 20s, your mid 30s, like think about these, and really think about, like, in 10 years, am I still going to be training the way I am? Or even better question is, the way I'm training today, does it support how I want to look, feel, and perform in 10 years? And that's a really powerful way to think about it. Because thinking about in the moment how you're going to, support yourself over time, like you are in it for the long haul. It's think about the long game, like the long game, essentially. It's you're in this for the long haul. You're not doing this, to kill yourself and pay with your health later on. I see a lot of professional athletes in my practice, um, that have paid dearly with their health. But guess what? They got paid lots and lots of money to do that. If you're a CrossFitter like me and didn't get paid anything to beat the dog shit out of themselves, like give your head a shake. Like that's not a priority. That's not a priority. So I wish I would have, thought a little bit more about that. So just think about what you're prioritizing and what's sustainable. So think about your health, think about your family, think about your business, think about if it supports, who you are and the community you're in and your friends and whatnot. So I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you got, some good insight from my lessons, as an old ass CrossFitter. And I still do love CrossFit, by the way. I don't do it as much anymore. My wrists do not enjoy the punishment of, particularly being on my hands upside down, like handstand push-ups, some of the gymnastic movements, but specifically the Olympic lifts, the snatch movements. Those ones are not so good for my wrists anymore. As a chiropractor, I'm trying to be a lot smarter, with my body. So I love working out. I love competing, which is why I'm choosing things that are more supportive of where I'm at and for my long term health, etc. So if you ever have anything you have questions about or insights or whatnot, feel free to reach out to me. Dr. Ryan at theweaponizedbody.com. As you know, I do have a hormone platform and functional blood chemistry company called Weaponized Wellness. If you ever want to get a functional blood panel done, we do basic and VIP panels at different price points, which includes a comprehensive consult and any hormone optimization medical approvals. So just feel free to look me up, send me a DM, shoot me an email. Happy to help. Uh, have fun out there. Be safe. Like, share, and yeah, share this with a CrossFitter, and and hope you guys continue to enjoy your training and go get it.